Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Logan Blackman Show. I hope you all are having a fantastic week up until this point. If you hear a little bit of like a humming sound in the background, I do apologize. I'm doing some laundry right now, so I've got my sheets, my bed sheets in the dryer right now, and I don't know how much you can hear. Maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit. Maybe that's what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm excited to do this show today. I am tired as hell, so let's try to get through the show as quickly as possible, okay? And we know how well that usually works out for me. Before we get into anything, though, let's make sure to go over to the housekeeping items first. Make sure to follow the Logan Blackman Show on every single form of social media: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and, of course, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find me on Twitter at Logan_Blackman. Instagram accounts, The Logan Blackman Show. Facebook and YouTube, search Logan Blackman Show. Make sure you like and follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to also follow the Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube accounts for the podcast. If you're listening to it on any of those platforms right now, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure to give a 5-star rating a rating out of 5 stars on Apple Podcast, Spotify. Make sure to give a thumbs up on the YouTube video. Also, make sure to check out our latest video on the Logan Blackman Show YouTube channel. It goes over our insanely early 2026 quarterback prospect rankings. I would appreciate if you guys check that out. Also, make sure to check out the blog post, 2026 insanely early quarterback prospect rankings for next year's draft. Blog post, YouTube video, all that great stuff can be found on the different links to the social media account, or you can search LoganBlackmanShow.com on whatever browser extension you use, whether it be Chrome, Safari, Opera, I don't care. Just Google it and check it out and see how that works out. And I hope you all enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Unlike what a lot of people were saying about the 2025 NBA draft lottery. The draft lottery is a very interesting idea that the NBA first put place in, I think, 1985. I think it was Patrick Ewing was the first player taken in that year's draft. I think it was 85, right? Yes, it was the first draft of the lottery era, 1985. And the lottery, it's supposed to be a thing to where it's like, okay, let's add another little twist to the draft. So it's not just the worst team. Like, you look at the NFL draft, and it's the worst team in the NFL gets the number 1 overall pick, second worst team gets second, third worst gets third, and so on and so forth. The NBA, the team that owns the number 1 overall pick may not have been the worst team in the NBA that season. If you look at this year's NBA draft, the Dallas Mavericks were one singular game away from making the playoffs, and they have the number 1 overall pick of the draft. If you look at the top 3 favorites for the number 1 overall pick in the draft, none of those 3 teams have a top 3 selection. Not a single one of those teams has a top 3 selection. And the NBA, back in 2019, switched up the lottery odds. Because it used to be like the worst team gets a lot more balls in the little pinball machine thing. I don't know what you really want to call it. Like the lottery, the thing you see on the lottery on TV and stuff like that. And stuff like that. You get more balls in there. But now, each of the top 3 teams, or top 4 teams, sorry. Okay, let's repeat this. In 2019, the NBA draft lottery was revamped to flatten the odds at the top and expand the lottery to include the top 4 picks. The 3 worst teams in the league now have an equal 14% chance of winning the first overall pick. This change aimed to discourage teams from intentionally losing games, tanking, to improve their lottery chances. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to do that. And if you're in the NBA, when is the last time, realistically, that you can remember where the worst team in the NBA got the number 1 overall pick in the draft? Where's the last time you heard that? Like, you look at the Atlanta Hawks last year. Were the Atlanta Hawks the worst team in the NBA last year? Were they? No, they weren't the worst team in the NBA last year. But they wound up with the number 1 overall pick. Now, no one really cared in the grand scheme of things who got the number 1 overall pick in the draft last year. No one cared because it was not a very loaded draft class. Shedeur was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. He's had a fairly solid rookie year, but it wasn't that great of a draft class. It wasn't that loaded of a draft, so people weren't going to make that big of a fuss about it. But the Atlanta Hawks were the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference in the play-in tournament. They had 36 wins last year. Just to put things in perspective, the team that had the worst record in the NBA was the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons in this draft picked 5th. They picked Ron Holland 5th overall. The next worst team in there was the Wizards. Okay, they got the 2nd overall pick in the draft. But the worst team in the league did not get the first overall pick. Okay, let's go back to 2023. Let's look at that draft class. The San Antonio Spurs got the number 1 overall pick in the draft. That was Victor Wembanyama was the number 1 overall pick there. They weren't the worst team in the league that year either. They had 22 wins. Yes, that's not a great win record right there. It's one of the worst records in the league. It's actually the second lowest amount of wins in the league. But the lowest team was the Detroit Pistons, who got the 5th overall pick in the draft. Got you the 5th overall pick in the draft. They had 17 wins, 5 less wins than the San Antonio Spurs, and they got 4 places lower than the Spurs in the draft. You look at 2022, the Orlando Magic back in 2022. What was the Magic's record back in 2022? So they had 22 wins. Again, not the worst team in the NBA that year. That was the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets in that year's draft picked 3rd overall. They picked 3rd. And ironically, Paulo Banchero, who ended up being the 1st overall pick, he was not known to be the 1st overall pick pretty much until draft night. It seemed like Jabari Smith was going to be the 1st overall draft pick, which ironically is who the Houston Rockets ended up getting in that draft class. Then you look at 2021. The Detroit Pistons finally got a number 1 overall draft pick. The Detroit Pistons that year had 20 wins. Again, not the worst team in the NBA. It was the Houston Rockets who ended up getting the 2nd overall pick in the draft. And then 2020. Look at the 2020 NBA draft. First overall pick, Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards was the 1st overall pick in the draft. They were not the worst team in the league that year. The 2 worst teams in the league were the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, who the Warriors picked 2nd and got James Wiseman, and the Cavaliers picked 5th and got Isaac Okoro. And in 2019, the year the draft lottery switched up a little bit, and this was a massive, massive deal at the time. The New Orleans Pelicans got to take Zion Williamson, with the Pelicans having 33 wins, which is more than the Suns, Knicks, Cavaliers, Bulls, Hawks, Wizards, all have worse records than them. And they got Zion Williamson. The New York Knicks, who had 17 wins in that year's draft, got the 3rd overall pick. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who had 19 wins, got the 5th overall pick in the draft. Chicago Bulls, who had 22 wins in that year, got the 7th overall pick. The Bulls just have a really weird fetish with the 7th overall pick. The Phoenix Suns, 19 wins on the season. Did they trade their pick or something like that? Oh no, they were the 6th overall pick, but they traded that pick to Minnesota anyways. Like, it is not a guarantee. Just because you have the worst record in the NBA, you do not have anything guaranteed for you going into the draft. And some people like that, and some people don't like that. There's been a lot of talk about the NBA draft being rigged, or the draft lottery being rigged. Like, you can pretty easily make a case for the draft lottery being rigged. You really can. Like, was anybody truly surprised that the Dallas Mavericks, who had, I think, a 1.8% chance to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft, was anybody really surprised that they wound up with the number 1 overall pick in the draft? Or the San Antonio Spurs with Victor Wembanyama going down with an injury and they shutting him down for the year? Which, hopefully, his injury is not as serious as what it first looked to be. They wound up getting the 2nd overall pick. Were we really surprised by that notion as well? No, we're not surprised by that. Because in the NBA, with the draft lottery, it seems like a team that gets a new owner or loses a star player, they get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Like, you look at the teams like the Hornets, the Jazz, the Wizards. Who did they lose that they need to replace? No one is caring about those teams. And I'm not trying to be mean or be a dickhead or anything like that, but no one really cares. So if you want to build back the ratings and stuff like that, if you're just looking at it from that perspective, teams like Dallas, who just traded away Luka Doncic, one of the top 5 players in the entire NBA, they're going to need to have that star replaced, right? At least that's what we would think. But you look back at not recent times, but throughout the history of the lottery as well, the first year, Patrick Ewing getting selected 1st overall by the Knicks. David Stern's favorite team just happened to be the New York Knicks. There's a lot of stuff in regards to that draft being rigged, in regards to because they didn't do the ball. They did little envelopes. Or big envelopes. So you could go back and there's some people talking about they put one envelope in the freezer so they knew one was cold, or one envelope had a bent corner so he knew which one to pull out of the jar, the ball thing. You look at the Cleveland Cavaliers getting the 1st overall pick in 2003 to select a guy from Cleveland, or Akron, in LeBron James. It just so happened to work out like that the kid from Akron, Ohio, just south of Cleveland, is going to get selected 1st overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Chicago Bulls, who had a 1.7% chance, I believe, to get the number 1 overall pick back in 2008, just happened to get the number 1 overall pick when the number 1 prospect in that year's draft happened to be from Chicago. Like, there's numerous times where you could point to and say that. I don't know definitively whether or not the draft lottery is quote-unquote rigged, because if it was, wouldn't it make more sense to send Zion Williamson to the New York Knicks rather than the New Orleans Pelicans? But again, that goes back to what I talked about earlier. They traded away Anthony Davis to Los Angeles Lakers, so they got a guy to hopefully be that star that they are now missing in that market. Does that make sense? Is that kind of making a roundabout way about that? Like the San Antonio Spurs. They always have a history of big men. David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Matt Bonner. Like, they have a Tiago Splitter. Like, they have a vast history of dominant big men throughout NBA history. And Victor Wembanyama is right there, the generational prospect, the prospect people are saying is as good or the most hyped prospect since LeBron James. And he falls right into the San Antonio Spurs lap. So the Spurs, who are historically the most winningest franchise in NBA history, at least they were. I don't know if they still are in regards to like win percentage stuff. They just happen to get Victor Wembanyama. And now the Dallas Mavericks, who are losing fans by the day, by the second, who got a lot older, who traded away a player where the previous owner said he'd rather divorce his wife than trade away the player. Fans revolted, Fire Nico shirts were everywhere. And it just so happened to work. Now, I don't think, like, if you want to go really down the rabbit hole and go like, oh, the NBA said, hey, trade Luka to LA and we'll give you the number 1 overall pick. I don't think that happened. I think Nico was really stupid with that whole thing. I just think that was malpractice. I don't think that was actually, okay, let's throw this in there. I think that was just him being stupid. And I do think he really did like Anthony Davis. I think he does believe that defense wins championships. As a guy who was with Kobe Bryant with Nike, having a guy like Luka, who, as great of a player as he is kind of the antithesis of Kobe Bryant. So if you have that mentality in there, I could see a reality where you could say, if you're Nico Harrison, and justify that in your own stupid brain and go, I'm going to trade away a top 5 player in the league for pretty much nothing. Like Anthony Davis, don't get me wrong, Anthony Davis in his day, great player. Great player. I mean, he's still a great player, don't get me wrong, but the injuries is not really the most ideal situation to be in. And now you got Kyrie Irving's ACL situation you got to deal with, so Lord knows what his future is. You got Derek Lively at center, Daniel Gafford's also there, PJ Washington. Like the Dallas Mavericks are not a bad basketball team. They were a lot worse without Luka Doncic than they were with it. They were a lot worse without him than they were with him. That goes without saying. It's a team that just went to the NBA Finals. Like, this was not a team that was in need of a rebuild or anything. And yet now we started to rebuild. And now you have the number 1 player in the country, Cooper Flagg, right there for the taking to potentially replace him. Now, there's no guarantee that Cooper Flagg is a great player in the NBA. There's no guarantee of that. Like, there's so many players you could look at throughout the course of every single sport where you look at, okay, this guy's going to be amazing. This guy's going to be a generational talent, not generational talent, but this is going to be a great player. And it just doesn't end up working out. There's numerous examples of that throughout the history of sport. And it's a shame that it doesn't work out like that. And it could be off the field circumstances, it could be on the court circumstances, it could be injuries, it could be a multitude of different things that just lead him to not working out. So this is saying like the Dallas Mavericks are now going to be competing for championships because they got Cooper Flagg. And I think Cooper Flagg will be a very good player in the NBA, but there is that chance that he could not be a great player in the NBA, if that makes any sense. Or if it just doesn't work out for some reason. Again, a lot of different factors play into that. But yeah, I wasn't surprised in the slightest that the Dallas Mavericks got this spot. And again, like I talked about before, if you go back to 2019 and look at each NBA season and see which teams had the worst overall record, it does not pay to tank. It does not pay to tank. Like, I saw people talking about the NFL needs to adapt. Like, Ryan Clark was tweeting about it. He's like, the NFL needs a draft lottery. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because unlike the NBA, you rarely see this type of tanking in the NFL. Because you don't see teams, like, if you trade away one player from a team in the NBA, that team could hit the fan like that. It could change the entire trajectory of their team if they trade a player that is worth shit. And their entire franchise is just down the shitter because now they're done. Like Victor Wembanyama getting hurt. I'm not saying the Spurs are going to be challenging for like NBA titles or anything, but him getting hurt definitely derailed their season. Like, that stuff plays a vital part in the success of teams. Like, you could look at one team and go like, oh, this is a great team, but that player's done. Oh, well, the whole season's pretty much done. Like the Cleveland Cavaliers right now, they are up against the Boston Celtics in the NBA playoffs right now. Out of the 4 teams remaining in the Eastern Conference, well, I guess not anymore, because not the Cleveland Cavaliers, sorry, the New York Knicks. I'm talking about the Knicks. The Cleveland Cavaliers just got eliminated by the Indiana Pacers. 4-1 was that series. But you look at the New York Knicks, who were up 2-1 in the series. We're up 2-1. They were less than, it was the Celtics down 2-1, were the favorite to win the series over the team that was up 2-1. Jason Tatum, Achilles injury, goes down. Might not play next season. And now the Knicks are up 3-1, have a chance to close out the series tomorrow night. Like, people were talking about the Celtics should win this series regardless of how many games they're down because they're just a talented team. They got the NBA championship history and all that stuff. Like, in just this squad, I'm not saying the Celtics in general, but this team, they won a championship together. They know what it takes to bounce back in this situation. But now he's back. Now he's gone. Oh, no. Now we're just right off this game. The Knicks can move on. That's how volatile the NBA is. You lose one player, trade a couple players, boom, season's done. NFL, you're not really going to get that. It's a lot harder, at least in my brain, to tank. You don't see a lot of players in the NFL tanking. There's no talks of load management in the NFL. I know they're only playing 17 games as opposed to 82, but the wear and tear on your body during an NFL season is a whole lot more than what you're going to get in an NBA game. It's just facts. You could say, well, the more games, yada, yada, yada. I don't care. You're not getting hit by a freaking freight train every single time you touch the ball in the NBA. That's just not how that works. But you're not hearing about load management. The Bills literally told the Patriots, hey, beat us. Like, we're not going to play anybody. The Patriots in turn were like, well, hey, we don't want to play any of our players either. The Patriots still won the game against the Bills last week of the regular season. And the Patriots went from the 1st overall pick to the 3rd overall pick like that, or the 4th overall pick, sorry. Like that. Like they were they're going to draft Travis Hunter, and then they got out of that spot because they beat the Bills, despite them pulling players in that game, trying to lose. But the players that were on the field were like, no, we're not doing this. But I could be reading the room wrong. I could be reading it very wrong. I feel like you get more of that, I don't know what you really want to call it, in that lower level of the NBA, like you get more of that, what is the word I'm looking for? Not that you're fine with it, but it's not anything that you're really, like you're kind of numb to it. Like there's no real fight past that point. If you're a bad NBA team, you're going to be bad for a while. Like the draft lottery's fun, and for a league like the NBA that struggles to compete with NFL preseason games, yeah, it adds a little bit of a nice little juice to the offseason. The NFL draft does not need touched in any stretch of the imagination. The fact that the only adjustment the NFL has made to the NFL draft in recent years was do it a city-by-city thing. So it used to just be at Radio City Music Hall. And before that, it was just in a random hotel. I don't remember what the hotel was. But now it goes city to city. Each team each city that has a league is going to host a draft. Like Pittsburgh's hosting it next year, I think. Washington, D.C. the year after that. Like before, it was just at Radio City Music Hall, which was cool. That place would get packed up, but now you're getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people going to the NFL draft. The NFL is, I've said this before, the NFL could really do anything and it would make money. It would. Like the NFL doesn't need to do any gimmicky things like a draft lottery or anything. The NHL, who does a draft lottery as well, and the NBA, who does a draft lottery, they can't compete with the NFL on any level. Apart from the NBA can offer players bigger contracts. You get Tobias Harris money that you give to like star players in the NFL. Like the money's there, but the rosters are a whole lot different too. There's not 53 players plus practice squad people on an NBA roster. There's not. Like it's just not. This is how it works. There's a lot less players in the NBA than there are in the NFL. It's common knowledge, common sense at that point. And the salary cap's different. Like, it's just how it works in the leagues. But that's not, if somebody gets paid more in the NBA, that's not a reason why the NBA is bigger. Because the NBA is not even touching the NFL, unless you want to go, oh, social media. No one gives two shits about your social media following. If your argument for something's being bigger than one thing and you're using social media as an argument, you've already lost the argument. Like, what's the whole point in that? Just show ratings. Just show ratings. Show a random Week 7 game between the Seahawks and Raiders and compare that to Game 5 of the NBA Finals. The NFL is going to have greater or equal ratings to that NBA Finals game. I like the NBA. I love watching the Chicago Bulls. That my team. I love watching them. As frustrating as they are, you can sharpen them into a play-in game every single freaking year. Apparently, they were a coin flip away from having the Dallas Mavericks spot. And that would have been sick. That would have been so cool to see. But that's not on the cards. I mean, the Bulls traded away Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Why didn't they get any good players? Why didn't they get the number 1 overall pick of the draft? Man. Craziness. Zach LaVine won a dunk contest. He won 2 dunk contests. How many dunk contests has Luka won? Who's really losing here? Oh, my goodness. But yeah, the draft lottery, that thing went nuclear last night. It went nuclear. Like, trading Luka Doncic is one of the dumbest moves in NBA history. And it didn't work out for the Lakers this year because they don't have a center. Like, if you watch that Timberwolves game, that Timberwolves series, and just go, we can just throw it into our 7-foot-tall center and the Lakers can't do anything? That's awesome. Like, I saw the tip of the last game of the series was Rudy Gobert against Rui Hachimura. That is the matchup we're dealing with. Oh, my God. Mark Williams was tweeting at him and posting on Instagram stories and all that stuff throughout the series as well. That one probably hurt because if they had Mark Williams there, an actual center other than Jackson Hayes or Rui Hachimura, like they would have probably gone fairly far in the playoffs because you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Now, it is interesting to see how they'll fare next season with the whole offseason where J.J. Redick not in his first year as a head coach. But, man, it does not pay to suck. Like, the one time I could think of a team getting accused of tanking was the Dolphins. And even then, when they were trying to quote-unquote tank for Tua, even then, they had Brian Flores, who was wanting to win every game until Stephen Ross had to step in and go, hey, dickhead, stop winning. Stop trying to win. With Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. Like, they were trying to win games. They were actively trying to win games. You could see that. And they ultimately got to it because of the hip injury. But that was the only time I could really... In the Cleveland Browns, it went 0-16. Because they were so bad, teams were looking at it like they had to be tanking. No, you just had Deshaun Kaiser as a quarterback. And the Browns, that didn't work out for them either. If you want to accuse the Cleveland Browns of tanking, that still didn't work out for them. They got worse after they got the guy a year after the tank. Because remember, when they tanked, they got Myles Garrett. They didn't get a quarterback. They got Myles Garrett. And at that time, I remember some people weren't really convinced at Myles Garrett. I think Warren Sapp was one of the people that wasn't really convinced about Myles Garrett going into that draft class. But it worked out. Myles Garrett's a future Hall of Famer. Great player. Franchise legend, all that stuff. Just took a couple little zeros at the end of his paycheck, and he'll stay, and he's going to, quote-unquote, try to win Super Bowls. That's what makes it fun. And we'll talk about the Cleveland Browns here in a little bit more. I didn't really think I'd talk about the Browns that much here, but we obviously will talk about them here in a little bit. But, yeah, the draft lottery, it's an entertaining thing, but it's just like a little fun thing. Does the NFL need it? No. The NFL is doing perfectly fine what they're doing. They don't need to copy what the NBA is doing. Like, I remember when the NHL draft, when Connor McDavid was getting selected, the first two teams, the teams with the best odds in that draft were the Buffalo Sabres and the Edmonton Oilers. The top two prospects unanimously in that year's class were Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel. You really think the NHL was going to give the Canadian prospect to the American team and the American prospect to the Canadian team? No. Obviously, they weren't going to do that. So the Canadian went to Canada, the American went to America, even though Jack Eichel pretty much hated his time in Buffalo the entire time because he went to Boston and was a Patriots fan. Captain of a Buffalo sports team and actively rooting for the Patriots. That's not really a great combination there. Jack Eichel, great player. Dickhead. That's all I'll say about that. But I do want to do this real quick, I think, because I think it'd be kind of fun. NBA number 1 overall pick quiz. So this is every number 1 overall pick throughout NBA draft history. So last year, all the way back to 1968, there's 57 players on this list. And if you just listen to what I talked about a little bit ago, you'll know we'll get the first ones pretty easily. It's just a matter of spelling some names right. But yeah, here we go. 3, 2, 1, start. So obviously last year, Zach Reisesher, I don't know how to spell his name. Hold on. I'm not cheating. I know who it is. I just don't know how to spell his name. Then you have Wembenyama. Okay, there we go. Bancaro. Then we have Cade Cunningham. There we go. We got our the most standard name out of all of them. Then we got Anthony Edwards. And you guys remember when Anthony Edwards was coming out? The drama around him not watching basketball and that he might try to go to the NFL to play wide receiver. Do you guys remember when that was taking place? Because I remember watching the Bulls had the 4th overall pick in that draft and smartly took Patrick Williams, who's been awesome throughout his time in the NFL, or the NBA, sorry. But that's another point. Zion Williamson was 2019. Then we have Phoenix. That was DeAndre Ayton. Ooh, the Marvin Badgley, Luka Doncic draft. Yeah, that was a fun one. The Bulls took Wendell Carter, I think, in that year's draft. Then Philadelphia, that was Markelle Fultz. That was sad. That was screwed up from the beginning. Ben Simmons was before that as well. Then Minnesota took Kentucky. That was Karl Anthony Towns. Do I need to spell? I was hoping it'd actually just throw me a bone here. Oh. Do I just need... Oh, okay. It's being weird. I just had to spell Towns. Cleveland, 2014. Remember, he was traded that night pretty much for Kevin Love to Minnesota, Andrew Wiggins. Then we have the greatest number 1 overall pick of all time, Anthony Bennett. Greatest number 1 overall pick ever. Then we have Kentucky in 2012 from New Orleans, Anthony Davis. Cleveland, that's Kyrie Irving. Took a quick pit stop with Duke before going up to the NBA. Then we had John Wall, the greatest media guy ever. Not media guy ever, but had a song in college. The John Wall song, awesome song. Would have been an NIL master at that point. Blake Griffin was 2009. Then we have obviously Derrick Rose in 08, like we talked about before. Portland, that was Greg Oden. Damn shame that one. Toronto, Andrea Bargnani. Oh, I actually spelled it right. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself there. Milwaukee in 2005, that's Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut from Utah. Then we have Dwight Howard before that. Cleveland, we already talked about that one. LeBron James. Houston from China. I think we know who that one is. Yao Ming. 2001, that is Kwame Brown. Then we have 2000, that was Kenyon Martin. Not a great draft. I just watched a video on the 2000 NBA draft. That is a rough draft. Rough draft. Michael Redd, I think, is the best player in that draft. Mike Miller is also in that draft class. Not great. Then we had Jay Williams, 1st overall pick. He was the 2nd overall pick. That was Elton Brand. I got my Duke players mixed around. Jason Williams was 2nd overall pick. Clippers, Michael Olowokandi. I don't know how to spell his name. Michael Olowokandi. Oh, did I spell it wrong? I didn't have an O in there. Michael Olowokandi. Come on. There we go. San Antonio Spurs from Wake Forest. That's Timmy Duncan. Obviously, we know that one. Georgetown. That's Allen Iverson. We know that one. I have an Allen Iverson jersey, actually. It's pretty freaking sweet. Oh, crap. Golden State from Maryland. Was it Joe Smith? I think it was Joe Smith. Okay, we're still moving. Purdue? Is that Glenn Rice? No, Glenn Rice was... Wait. Glenn Rice? Come on, spell it right. No, not Glenn Rice. He went to Michigan anyways. Who was this? Crap. I'm completely blanking. We'll go 93 from Michigan, Chris Webber. He got drafted by the Magic, and they traded for Penny Hardaway. Then Shaq. He was right before that. UNLV Charlotte, that's Larry Johnson. Then Syracuse, New Jersey. Oh, crap. Now we're struggling here. The Milwaukee-Purdue one. Who the hell was that? I got to get this one because he was actually a pretty solid bucket getter. It wasn't Glenn Rice. It was not Glenn Rice because Glenn Rice, again, went to Michigan. Wow, why am I blanking on this? Glenn Robinson. Was it Glenn Robinson? Yes! There we go. Not Glenn Rice, Glenn Robinson. Then we got Sacramento, Louisville. No clue. Vlade Divac. I don't know. He didn't get drafted by Sacramento. He got drafted by the Lakers, but we'll count it. Kansas Clippers, no idea. David Robinson, yep, Navy. There's only one dude who went to Navy. North Carolina, okay, well, I can throw in, we already talked about Patrick Ewing. Obviously talked about him. We got Hakeem Olajuwon. I don't know how to spell Hakeem Olajuwon. Hold on. Hakeem Olajuwon. Okay. Olajuwon. There we go. Ralph Sampson from Virginia. They got a nice little Twin Towers thing going on there. North Carolina, that would have been James Irving. Not James Irving. James Worthy. I don't know why. James Worthy. DePaul, Dallas. Can't think. Got Magic in there. Who else is in here? I'm just going to start throwing out random players, like Ben McAdoo. No. Oh, Lou Alcindor. Is he in here? Yes, he is. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We got him in Milwaukee. Notre Dame, Illinois State, UCLA. Oh, Bill Walton from Portland. That one. We got that one down. Maryland, Indiana, Minnesota to Portland. I got 3 minutes left. I might just call it quits because I'm blanking too much. I'm trying to think, though, on some of these last ones. Kansas and the Clippers. Danny Manning? Yes, we got Danny Manning in there. North Carolina, 1986 to Cleveland. Oh, Brad Doherty. Brad Daughtry. I don't remember to spell his name. There we go. That has to be him, right? Yes, it is. Okay. So I've got 45 out of 57 right now. Syracuse and New Jersey. Who? It's not Julius Erving, but we're just going to try. We're just going to try. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, I don't get it. I wasn't getting it anyways. Then I have no clue. I'm done. I don't think I've got any more in me. I've got 2 minutes left in this. I'm going to stop it at the 2-minute warning. Crap. Yeah, I'm just going to give up. I'm not going to sit here and just... Oh, Derek Coleman. I should have gotten that one. Purvis Ellison, no. Mark Aguirre, fine. Joe Barry Carroll, no idea. Michael Thompson, sure. John Lucas, Kent Benson, David Thompson, Doug Collins, Austin Carr, Bob Lanier, Elvin Hayes. Probably should have gotten Elvin Hayes. Well, I got 45 out of 57. And I got everyone right, eventually, from 2024 to 1991. And then I only got 2 wrong in there between them and 1982. So I'll take it. 79% accuracy, I'll take it. It's nothing that's like I'm going to write home about or anything, but I will definitely take it. It's definitely something that it's fine. It's fine. It's acceptable. And while we're on the topic of quizzes, I mean, I might as well just do number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL quiz as well, right? NFL number 1 draft picks. Why not? Since 1980? Yeah, we can do this. It's not since 1968, but there is 46 options. And, I mean, we got 45 right in the NBA one, so why would it not make sense if we got 46 in this one? Like, we could do this. We can do this. Ready, steady, go. This was not the plan, I will say, but we're going with it. Cam Ward, we got Caleb Williams is in there. Then Bryce Young. I don't know why I blanked on that one. Then we have Trayvon Walker from Georgia. We have Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to try and go in order as much as possible, like we did with the last one. Then we got Joe Burrow in there. Cardinals, Oklahoma, we got Kyler Murray. Then we got Baker Mayfield. Then we got Myles Garrett. Obviously, we talked about Myles Garrett before. Well, again, we'll talk about the Browns here in a little bit as well. The Rams, that was Jared Goff. The Buccaneers, 2015, that was Jameis Winston. I'm not even going to look at the college that they have on there. The Clowney was also in there. Chiefs, that's obviously Eric Fisher from Central Michigan. Colts, Andrew Luck, suck for luck. Then you got Cam Newton in 2011. Rams, Sam Bradford. Come on. Sam Bradford. Lions, that's Matt Stafford. We know that one. Dolphins, 2008, it's Jake Long. Raiders, 07, that's Jamarcus Russell. Then we got Mario Williams, the Vince Young, Reggie Bush draft. Then we got Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers draft. Eli Manning to the Chargers. Not the Giants, the Chargers. Then we got Carson Palmer. Come on. Carson Palmer. Then we have David Carr, not Derek Carr, David Carr. Michael Vick. Courtney Brown from Penn State. We got Tim Couch in the first pick of the new Cleveland Browns. Peyton Manning. We have Orlando Pace. We have Keyshawn Johnson in there. Come on. We have Kajana Carter. We have Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson. Then we have Drew Bledsoe. Come on, gotta spell it right. Then we have Steve Empt. I can always forget how to spell his name. Emptman. There we go. Then we have Russell Maryland from Miami. And then we have Jeff George to the Colts. We have Troy Aikman. The Falcons played the Colts in that one very hard, so that one's kind of funny. We have Andre Bruce. Yeah, Andre Bruce to the Falcons. We have Vinny Testaverde. Then we have Bo Jackson, who was a number one overall pick, and then said, yeah, no, I'm not playing for you. We have Bruce Smith, obviously. We have Irving Fryer from Nebraska. Colts, John Elway. I sometimes forget he was drafted by the Colts, technically, and then they traded him to the Broncos. Then Patriots. Ooh. Is Billy Sims 1980? Oh, Kenneth Sims. Yeah, they gave me Kenneth Sims for the Patriots. I would not have gotten the Patriots one at all. The South Carolina one. New Orleans Saints. 1981. It's not Rodgers, is it? It is George Rodgers. Hell, frick yeah. Let's go. 100%. 46 out of 46. Now, you could say, Logan, you've done that quiz a couple times now. I don't remember the last time I did that, so I will take it. And I did it in less than 3 minutes. 5:15. This quiz had an 8-minute time limit. I did that less than 3 minutes. So even if I have done that quiz before, guess what? I did it in record time. And even in the NBA quiz, I didn't need to do that recently. I just got great ball knowledge. Now, I'm not doing the MLB draft. Don't do that. I'm not doing the MLB draft. But NFL draft, NBA draft to a certain extent, I've got one that down to a lock. And in a couple months, or maybe we'll do it, because there is a stretch where I like to go back and just try to list every player who's drafted in a specific draft. We'll try to do it this year, where we do it from this year's draft. We'll try to just go back as far as we can, and in the best way possible, try to do it in order. I know that's not going to be 100% possible, but as far back as I can go while doing it 100%. And if I can't get it 100% in specific ones, then guess what? Or like in order, 100% in order. 100% its own thing, that's fine, but I want to do it 100% in order as well. I just need the team. And I could do I would imagine anyways, I don't want to toot my own horn a little bit, I could probably get back to 2017. I think that was might be where I fall. 2018 would be a stretch. 2018 would be a stretch in regards to like getting it exactly right. But I think I could get every single player in the 2018 draft. First round. I should have clarified that as well. First round. Not the entire draft, obviously. Not the entire draft. In any stretch. I just need the pick and team, and I'll be good. Okay? And if anybody wants to challenge me on that, I'll be happy to do it. It might be, I might fall flat on my face. I might chicken out last second. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But on to just this year's draft in general. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about it in recent weeks, but obviously, again, the draft just happened. Or not just happened 2 weeks ago. And we've started rookie mini camps and everything. And there's a lot of reports coming out, especially regarding the quarterback landscape of the NFL draft right now. We've seen Jackson Dart take the field. Cam Ward's been looking really good. Xavier Restrepo's been looking pretty good for the Tennessee Titans. Remember, we talked about that when he first ran his 40 at his pro day. Don't worry about that. He's a lot faster than that 40-yard dash suggests. He's Miami's all-time leading receiver. He's not slow. So don't take that as gospel. His 40-yard dash time. I haven't heard anything about Tyler Shuck really down in New Orleans at this point in time, but one would imagine with Derek Carr retiring that I expect to see him start week 1. Hunter Deckers, former Iowa State quarterback, he did sign with the Saints, so he'll have a chance, but it just seems like Tyler Shuck's job to lose at this point in time. I mean, you have a new head coach in Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator, new offensive schematics, and they drafted you in the second round. Like, you're not a late-round draft pick. No, you're a second-round draft pick in the NFL. You have a very good chance to start. The guy you replaced started week 1 his rookie year as well, and he was a second-round draft pick. And that's Derek Carr with the Raiders. And I think they signed Matt Schaub that offseason. I can't remember who they ended up signing that offseason, but Derek Carr ended up taking the job week 1 as a second-round draft pick. Andy Dalton, I don't know if he started exactly week 1, but Andy Dalton took that job fairly quickly in Cincinnati. He was a round 2 guy. Jalen Hurts, round 2 guy. Took the job from Carson Wentz pretty much. Put in Jalen Hurts in the game, and he's taken it, ran with it, won a Super Bowl, could have won 2 Super Bowl MVPs despite losing 1 Super Bowl. Like, hey, even if Derek Carr was there, I could have said Tyler Shuck has a fairly solid chance of getting that job just because of everything new around the organization at this point. But now that he's not, you really have no excuse not to take that job. You really don't. Now, maybe Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler and Hunter Deckers have something crazy going up their sleeve right now, but I am like 90% sure Tyler Shuck has to start week 1. And then you look at like the Cleveland Browns. I also saw Jalen Milrose doing pretty well as well, but that's expected. But you look at the Cleveland Browns, and they're going to be talked about a lot throughout the course of the offseason because of the whole Deshaun Watson thing. They have Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dillon Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. They have a very insane quarterback room to the point where you're like, there's no way that's real. You look at what their players are in their quarterback room, and you don't believe what you're actually looking at. Like, it doesn't make any sense what you're seeing. It's like, this is like the worst combination of quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. I shouldn't say that. I gotta backtrack. I'm obviously exaggerating here because I like some of the quarterbacks they have, but it's just a crazy room to look at. It's absolutely crazy. And right now, apparently, which doesn't surprise me, Shedeur Sanders is outperforming Dillon Gabriel at camp. Well, yeah. Shedeur Sanders is a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel. He is. We all know that. This isn't something new. Like, if he's outperforming Dillon Gabriel, I'm not that surprised. Should we be shocked? Like, the only reason we should be shocked is because he's a 5th-round draft pick, but we all have said, I've said this from the jump, he wasn't drafted in the 5th round because of the quarterback that he is. He was drafted in the 5th round because of all the stuff he brings off the field. Everything he does on the field warrants him being drafted a little bit higher, a lot bit higher than the fifth round of the NFL draft. The fact that he was taking 50 picks after Dillon Gabriel is pretty crazy. And there's some quarterbacks that were taken but after Dillon Gabriel, even after Shedeur Sanders, where I was surprised that Dillon Gabriel went above them. But, again, it goes back to the whole thing about Dillon Gabriel has played for 3 different schools, 3 different offensive systems, in 3 different conferences. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist. He was an All-American. He was the starting quarterback of the only team in the FBS level to go undefeated throughout the regular season. Yes, they shit the bed in the Rose Bowl, but they were the only team in the FBS level to go undefeated in the regular season and win their conference title in their first year in a new conference. So it makes sense on some factors. Like, if you just look at that and go like, okay, he's one of the most consistent quarterbacks throughout all of college football. He holds numerous all-time records, or is very close to passing them, just for a son of a bitch down in Houston named Case Keenum. But Dillon Gabriel, you look at what he did in those teams, those are very quarterback-friendly systems. Oklahoma, Oregon, and UCF. I don't want to take anything away from Dillon Gabriel and what he's done throughout his time in college, but those are very quarterback-friendly, quarterback-centric teams. And Dillon Gabriel is smart enough to navigate whatever the defense throws at him. There's nothing you could throw at him that he's going to be surprised about. That's what you want. And there's no off-the-field not concerns, but there's no off-the-field distractions in there as well. And if you're drafting a quote-unquote backup quarterback, you want the guy who has the least amount of distractions, who's also the most experienced, and that's Dillon Gabriel. But Dillon Gabriel does not have a stronger arm than Shedeur Sanders. He's not more athletic than Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he looks more athletic because he's a lot smaller than Shedeur Sanders, but there's not a lot of things Dillon Gabriel does better than Shedeur Sanders, except for not having rap songs and a giant watch on his wrist. Apart from that, on the field, Dillon Gabriel does not do anything really better, I would say, than Shedeur Sanders at this point in time. So again, I'm not shocked. But in that same exact breath, reporters, stop asking stupid questions on why Dillon Gabriel is taking the 1 reps over Shedeur Sanders. All of this stuff I just said about Shedeur Sanders being better than Dillon Gabriel is true. But the fact of the matter is the Browns drafted Dillon Gabriel 50 picks before Shedeur. So obviously he's going to get the 1's reps at the start of camp. I haven't seen anything if they've switched up the rotation or anything like that. But obviously Dillon Gabriel is going to start off camp as QB1 out of the rookie quarterbacks. He was drafted not just in the 3rd round, but 50 picks before the next quarterback. Obviously. Why is that a question? That's not a very smart question. Let's attach our brain stems back and we'll go like, oh, it's pretty easy to see why, just on that factor alone, why he's taking reps from Shedeur Sanders in regards to the 1s. But I do think the talent level between Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel will start to show itself, and I do think Shedeur will eventually surpass him in the depth chart. But like we talked about right after the draft, Dillon Gabriel is going to have a lot longer leash because of the fact he was drafted so much higher than Sanders. Like, they're going to be a little bit more lenient, I guess you could say, on Dillon Gabriel because, or give him more margin for error because he's a higher draft pick. And it's not that he's a first-round draft pick, but if you're competing with another guy and you were taking 50 spots before him, you're going to have a lot. Like, that's a whole other round and a half. Like, you're not close in draft picks right there. Like, it is pretty crazy, the gap between that spot. And that's what kind of puts it more into perspective. It's like, wow, that's kind of stupid. It really doesn't make any sense apart from the off-the-field stuff. That part, it makes sense. 50 picks is ridiculous, though. You can sit back and think that you understand what the Browns are thinking in regards to drafting Dillon Gabriel above Shedeur Sanders from an off-the-field perspective, which, again, Shedeur is not a bad person. There's no character concerns, at least from what I can tell, with Shedeur Sanders. It's all just the baggage that he brings off the field. If you were justifying that, then you go like, okay, well, I can see that. But 50 picks, that's where we're going a little bit crazy. And I think this is the spot for Shedeur Sanders. This is the best place he could have gone. The Cleveland Browns are running an offense that is very keen on Shedeur Sanders' skill set. Or not keen, but works really well with Shedeur Sanders' skill set. Intermediate throws, play action passes. Like, that's what Shedeur Sanders can do. And you brought Quinshon Judkins in from Ohio State, which I thought was a very nice get there. So there's a solid, I'm not saying week 1, but Shedeur Sanders could take the starting job midway through the season, and I wouldn't really think twice about it. And that place would erupt when he goes on the field. Same thing happened when Johnny Manziel took the field. Same thing happened in Denver when Tim Tebow took the field. There's going to be a very unpopular dude in there. It was Brian Hoyer in Cleveland. It was Kyle Orton in Denver. Right now, it is going to be one of Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, and Dillon Gabriel. I'm not even throwing Deshaun Watson there because that thing is dead and buried. That the hatred for him, it is. You could have, I don't even know. You could have Nathan Peterman as the backup quarterback in Cleveland, and they would rather have Nathan Peterman play over Deshaun Watson, which 5 years ago would have been absolutely crazy thing to say. Absolutely crazy. But I would be willing to bet that there would be Cleveland Browns fans that want Nathan Peterman to start over Deshaun Watson. Because Nathan Peterman is going to be paid a whole lot less money than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson and Nathan Peterman, in regards to just quarterbacking, are not even close. But the amount of money Deshaun Watson on for how bad he is a lot worse than Nathan Peterman on the money he has for how bad he is. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, you want to be if you're going to be bad and you're paid a shit ton of money, you at least want it to be like, okay, your badness is like just below how much you're paid. Like, you're not above it, you're not at it, you're bad, you're worse than your contract suggests, but it's not like insanely different. But Deshaun Watson is like so far down from that number that it makes it so much worse. And Deshaun Watson, in regards to like price tag and everything, like that is one of the worst quarterbacks in the new Browns history. And the new Browns, since they came back in 1999, have had a really bad run of quarterbacks. A horrific run of quarterbacks. You're talking about Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Deshaun Kaiser, Cody Kessler. You're looking at Jason Campbell, Seneca Wallace. You're looking at Charlie Fry, Brian Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Brandon Weeden, Derek Anderson, who did make a Pro Bowl, so I'll give him a little bit of slack on that one. Kelly Holcomb is in there. RG3 is in there. Josh McCown is in there. Who else did I say? Deshaun Kaiser? I can't remember if I said Deshaun Kaiser or not, but I could, even if I did, double down on Deshaun Kaiser. Is there any other quarterbacks that I missed in that category? Like, it is a torrid quarterback history in the from 1999 on alone. And they obviously have like Bernie Kosar and Otto Graham in the 20th century. Vinny Testaverde for a little bit as well before they moved to Baltimore. But since 1999, it is beyond garbage. And, they also had Jeff Garcia when he came in from San Francisco after he was balling out with Sanford. He came to Cleveland, sucked. I think they got rid of him like midway through the season. I think it's a good success with Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, but he was terrible in Cleveland. I like Jeff Garcia, but he was bad. He was brutally bad in Cleveland. Was Tim Rattay in Cleveland? He could have been. It wouldn't surprise me. Gus Frerotte, I think, was in Cleveland. And just moral of the story, Colt McCoy, there's just a lot of not very good quarterbacks. Colt McCoy, good journeyman, backup quarterback, but not a starter. And Deshaun Watson, if you polled most Browns fans, I would be willing to bet they say he's the worst out of all of them because of the money that he's on. If he was on Kenny Pickett money and he was as bad as he is, no one would care. No one would give two shits if he was as bad as that if he was on Kenny Pickett money. But the fact of the matter, he's not. He's on Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes money. More money than them. At least Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if Josh passed Deshaun Watson or not now. But regardless, he's in that tier in regards to pay, but he's at a Kenny Pickett or below level. That does not make sense. Would you pay Kenny Pickett the amount of money they're paying Deshaun Watson? No. Obviously, you would not do that. That's what I'm talking about in regards to the gap. That shows how bad you truly are. Like, Kenny Pickett could start week 1, and it wouldn't really surprise me. I don't know. The Browns are a really interesting situation. It's a very interesting team. It's a very interesting overall situation. I don't know. This team's just a frickin'... I mean, we went from Myles Garrett talking about how he wants to win Super Bowls and he wants a trade to signing a massive contract and going like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to trade. Mason Graham, he's had a rough camp though. I have seen that. I saw him throwing up like the first week of camp. So that's definitely interesting. But yeah, this quarterback room's insane. Joe Flacco, Dillon Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson. That is an insane quarterback room. That is absolutely ridiculous. And there's a picture going around of Kenny Pickett's hands versus Joe Flacco's hands. Like, it was... Shit is hitting the fan in Cleveland. Cleveland is going to be one to watch this year. Hard Knocks, I don't know if they've announced where they're going or not. Hard Knocks needs to get their ass down to Cleveland or up to Cleveland or over to Cleveland. I don't remember where they were last year. But regardless, that's where they need to be. That's where they need to be. And I think that's all I've really got on the show for today's edition of Logan Blackman Show. But I did want to talk about this because I saw this on Twitter and I always like seeing these. Because it's like the engagement farming post where you just post random lists and don't have any explanation behind it and kind of just go, hey, look at that. And you try to throw like little curveballs in there and go like, oh, this is where, hear this. But this is every NFL team's best quarterback ever. And there's some that are easy in here. Like the Cardinals, Kurt Warner. We're not competing with a whole lot here. Kurt Warner dragged the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. Two-gloved 80-year-old Kurt Warner got the Cardinals to a Super Bowl. Like, you got Bobby Hart is in there. You've got Carson Palmer. Kyler Murray's pretty damn good, but it's Kurt Warner. The Falcons, Matt Ryan, it is. Yes, I know there are a lot of people who love Mike Vick, Michael Vick was awesome. Matt Ryan's the greatest Falcons quarterback of all time. Chris Chandler has a say in there. Bartkowski, Steve Bartkowski, he can say something there. Brett Favre. No, I'm joking. But Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Again, obviously, Joe Flacco was that. It's now Lamar. The Bills, Jim Kelly. Yeah, I understand. I think it's Josh Allen. But Jim Kelly, I completely understand. 4 Super Bowls, back to back to back to back. Yeah. Pioneered one of the greatest offenses of the 90s. Yeah, I understand. Cam Newton in Carolina. Yeah. Jake Delhome's his only real competition there. You have Kerry Collins was the first quarterback there. Steve Berline was there for a little bit. Vinny Testaverde for a year. You drafted Chris Winkie in the 4th round. I think he went 1-15 as a starter or something like that. Like, the Panthers don't really have a great quarterback history. So we'll see how Bryce Young does. The Bears, Jim McMahon. The Bears are a gross franchise, but it's probably Sid Luckman. Even though there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't want to throw in Sid Luckman because he's so old. Jim McMahon was the starting quarterback of a team, one of the most famous NFL teams of all time. Jim McMahon is a tough son of a bitch. Jim McMahon is not a great quarterback. Everybody loves Jim McMahon. He was probably the heart and soul of that 85 Bears team, and that's a team that includes some very legendary players, Walter Payton, Devin Singletary, Mike Singletary. Like, they were a legendary team. Mike Ditka as head coach, Buddy Ryan as the defensive coordinator. But Jim McMahon, again, he's a legend in Chicago, but he was not a great quarterback. Like Jay Cutler, this is how sad the Bears are. Jay Cutler is the Bears' all-time leader in pretty much every single passing category. That's the Bears right there. Caleb Williams is the first Bears rookie quarterback to ever pass for over 3,000 yards. The Bears are the only franchise in the NFL to not have a 4,000-yard passer. Chicago's got a Pope before a 4,000-yard passer. Jim McMahon, it's not, unfortunately. As much as I would love to say it is Jim McMahon, it's probably Sid Luckman. The Bengals, Ken Anderson, you can make a case. He's the first quarterback for the Bengals to go to a Super Bowl. So, I mean, you can see that. He took the 49ers to the Super Bowl. Boomer Esiason won an MVP. Also took the Bengals to a Super Bowl, so you could make an argument for him. Joe Burrow obviously took the Bengals to a Super Bowl. Top 4 quarterback in the NFL. Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton would be a little bit rough because he never won a playoff game in Cincinnati. Carson Palmer, had he not torn his ACL against the Steelers in the playoffs, maybe we're talking about that Bengals team a little bit differently, because I think it was the year the Steelers went on to beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. If I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But, yeah, Ken Anderson makes sense. Ken Anderson definitely makes sense. He had a sick tash in there as well. The dude, who was the dude in the early, like, oh, crap. They had a really good quarterback. Crap, what was his name? Not 70s. I didn't need Ken Anderson. I already have Ken Anderson. What was his name? It was 1960s. Greg Cook. He was a guy that could have maybe been on that category, but had a shit ton of injuries. One of the what ifs in that time, this is in NFL history, like, he was a great player, just couldn't stay healthy. And that's a problem for those types of players. Like 6'4", 220 pounds back in the 60s. Yeah, he could have been really good, but nah. But yeah, Ken Anderson, I can understand him being the best quarterback on there. Then Otto Graham, the Browns. Yeah, it's him or Bernie Kosar. We're not really competing with a whole lot here, but it's definitely Otto Graham. Troy Aikman with the Cowboys. No, it's Roger. But I understand why people have Troy Aikman in there. 3 Super Bowls, but I have been on the train of saying Troy Aikman's the most overrated, legendary quarterback of all time, and don't want to like discredit 3 Super Bowl championships and anything like that. But yeah, I'm not really. It's Roger. Roger's the greatest quarterback in Cowboys history. He's Captain America. He just is. He was the guy who was the quarterback for America's team. Like, it's Roger. It's just Roger Staubach. Roger Staubach is better than Troy Aikman. It's not really that much of a conversation to be had. Denver, John Elway, obviously. I mean, you could maybe throw in Peyton Manning for those couple years, but no, it's John Elway. Lions, Matt Stafford. This one's interesting because Jared Goff definitely has more of a say than I think some people want to give him credit for. Because Jared Goff is the starting quarterback for the most successful Lions team since the 50s, when they had Bobby Lane at quarterback, or the 60s. Like, no, before the 60s. What am I talking about? 50s, yeah. But since then, This is the most successful era in Detroit Lions football. And the best team they've had since then. But Jared Goff has been no slouch. Going there to die, to becoming a top 5 MVP candidate, Jared Goff definitely gets a say in there, but Matt Stafford, is the best quarterback in Lions history. Packers, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you probably. I was hanging out with some friends the other day, and a big Packers fan said Aaron Rodgers better than Brett Favre. So I will take that. I love Brett Favre on the field. On the field. I don't want to talk about anything Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre do off the field. I just want to stick on the field. Just squarely stay on the field. And Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre. Brett Favre's top 5 favorite quarterback of all time for me. I'm not saying best, but favorite. But Aaron Rodgers, is probably the greatest Packers quarterback of all time. The Texans, Deshaun Watson. Ironically, of what we just said earlier, it is Deshaun Watson. I mean, you're competing with Matt Schaub. That's it. We can't include the Oilers here. That's Tennessee. So you're fighting with Matt Schaub and David Carr. And C.J. Stroud. But it's Deshaun Watson. Colts, Peyton Manning. Yeah, Johnny Unitas is in there. Earl Morrall was a quarterback for them for a little bit. But when Johnny Unitas was hurt, Curtis Painter obviously got them Andrew Luck. So we can throw him in there. But yeah, it's Peyton Manning. The Jaguars, Mark Brunell. Yeah, I love Mark Brunell. Mark Brunell was really fun to watch. I would very much recommend you guys go and watch the super loaded expansion Jaguars when they first came in the NFL. Like, that team was so much fun. I think it was it Kenny Smith and Keenan McCardell at wide receiver? You had Fred Taylor at running back, Tony Baselli at tackle, Mark Brunell at quarterback. They were fun. They were really fun. Mark Brunell, lefty quarterback as well. So yeah, Mark Brunell. And Trevor Lawrence will probably take that spot eventually, but it is Mark Brunell. Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, yeah. I mean, Len Dawson was awesome. Joe Montana was there for a little bit, but it's just Patrick Mahomes. Raiders, Ken Stabler. Yeah, it's Kenny the Snake. And you got Jim Plunkett rolling around in there. Rich Gannon won an MVP, took the Raiders to the Super Bowl as well. But it's Kenny. I'm glad he got into the Hall of Fame. Finally, another lefty in there. Phillip Rivers for the Chargers. It's him or Dan Fouts. And I could see an argument for people to make Dan Fouts because of the Air Coryell offense that they ran back in the day. For how many yards he put up with Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner. Like they were just a fun team. That Chargers team back then with Dan Coryell as the head coach. But Phillip Rivers, yeah, it's just Phillip Rivers. I can make a pretty solid case that he's the best quarterback just based off what they did, not what they accomplished out of the 2004 draft class. But I'm not going to do that here. But Phillip Rivers, yes, I would say he's the greatest Chargers quarterback of all time. But no disrespect to Dan Fouts in there. Rams, Kurt Warner, yeah, it's Kurt Warner. And you got Matt Stafford in there right now. Won a Super Bowl, much like Kurt Warner did as well. But Kurt Warner won a couple MVPs. Was it 2 MVPs, or did he just win 1? I can't remember exactly. But Kurt Warner, yeah. And you got some great players like Bob Waterfield and Norm Van Brocklin back in the day as well. So you do have some like great legendary players that played for the LA Rams. But it's Kurt Warner. You got Vince Ferragamo in there as well. Mark Bolger. You get... But yeah, Kurt Warner. Dan Marino, the Dolphins, doesn't take a lot of thought process there. The Vikings, Fran Tarkenton, again, not really a lot of thought process there. Patriots, Tom Brady, yeah, don't really take a lot of thought process there. The Saints, Drew Brees, yeah, don't really take a lot of thought process there. Archie Manning is really the only conversation piece in there. Giants, Eli Manning, yeah. I mean, Phil Simms had a Super Bowl, had one of the best performances in a Super Bowl game against the Denver Broncos. Didn't play against the Bills in the 90s. He was injured, so Jeff Hostetler had to start that game. But Eli, yeah, it's Eli. I've waxed lyrically about Eli on the show before, so I'm not going to do that again here. The Jets, Joe Namath, yeah, probably. I mean, again, we're not really picking from a very great patch of players here. Like, other than Joe Namath, who would you even throw in that conversation? Vinny Testaverde? Chad Pennington? Would you throw... I don't even know. Who would you... Like, Neil O'Donnell was one of the biggest, worst contracts in NFL history at that time. Boomer Esiason, Frank Reich was also with the Jets for a little bit. The Jets don't have a great quarterback history. As much as we made fun of the Bears earlier, the Jets is really bad as well. But it's Joe Namath. The Eagles, Donovan McNabb. Is it not Jalen Hurts? Is it not Jalen Hurts? Donovan McNabb, don't get me wrong. Donovan McNabb, I know we talked about him in the last show in regards to the dual threat quarterback thing about him not being on Josh Allen's level, which he's still not. But Donovan McNabb, was a very good player for that time. He just never had a great relationship with Philadelphia. I mean, he was booed on draft day because they wanted Ricky Williams. Like, go and watch that video of the 99 draft where the Browns took Tim Couch, second overall pick. The Eagles took Donovan McNabb. His mom had to go out on stage to stand with him because the whole crowd was booing. He's like, what, you're going to boo his mom too? And they did. The Eagles fans booed his mom as well as Donovan McNabb. So go and watch that clip. But the Eagles have a pretty solid quarterback history. Like Randall Cunningham, Ron Jaworski even. You have Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate before he got hurt. Even after, he was still a very solid quarterback until he just started dipping a little bit. Nick Foles obviously won a Super Bowl with them, won a Super Bowl MVP. But is it just not Jalen Hurts? Is it not? Is Jalen Hurts worse than Donovan McNabb? I don't know. I think that's a conversation that can definitely be had. But I'm not mad with Donovan McNabb. I would if it's not Jalen Hurts, I would rather see Randall Cunningham. But I preferred Randall Cunningham. It's just a matter of if Bryce Pop didn't hurt him, the Eagles might have been a better team in the 80s than what they actually were. And they still had like Brown and Reggie White on the defense and stuff like that. But if Randall Cunningham did get hurt, we might be talking about the Eagles a little bit differently. Randall Cunningham a little bit differently there as well. But Donovan McNabb, again, went to a Super Bowl and all that great stuff. And given how his career started in Philadelphia, the fact that he got to a Super Bowl and stayed there for as long as he did is pretty damn impressive. So I'm not mad at Donovan McNabb. But again, Jalen Hurts, I think, might have a better case at the end of the day. Steelers, Terry Bradshaw. Yeah, it's Terry. Won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, I think. Never lost a Super Bowl. Did get benched for one time for Joe Gilliam back in the day because him and Chuck Noll did not like each other. So that was an interesting battle. But Terry, yeah, he was like the prototypical quarterback even back then. Like, if you were trying to build a quarterback for today's NFL, you'd probably build someone that looked, maybe not with the hairline, but looked like somebody like Terry Bradshaw. But Ben Roethlisberger definitely has a strong case there. Won 2 Super Bowls in that category as well. Had one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history as well. There's a very, you can make a case either way, but I feel like there would be a lot of Steelers hard-pressed not to put Terry in there. Joe Montana of the Niners, again, doesn't really need a lot of thinking there. Seahawks, Russell Wilson. Matt Hasselbeck puts up a great fight. Jim Zorn could be in that conversation as well. Geno Smith for that short period, but it's Russell. Don't let the latter part of Russell Wilson's career confuse you on how great of a player he was when he was in Seattle. Tampa, Tom Brady, yeah. And it's not just because he's Tom Brady. The Buccaneers, I said this on this show, when they got Tom Brady, once he takes a snap, he's the greatest quarterback in Buccaneers history. Because the Buccaneers have a trash quarterback history prior to Tom Brady getting there. Like, you had Vinny Testaverde, you had freaking Steve Spurrier, drafted him, Jeff Garcia for a little bit. Or not, I shouldn't put Jeff Garcia. He was good with Tampa, but he was only there for a short period of time. I meant Trent Dilfer, another guy who played for the San Francisco 49ers. Trent Dilfer, you drafted him in the first round. That one did not really work out. Jameis Winston, we've talked about before. The Buccaneers and their quarterbacks, they had Steve Young and Doug Williams, both guys who ended up winning Super Bowls. Steve Young doing a lot more than that as well. But that their handling of you had Steve Young, future Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the most underrated legends in NFL history, on your roster, and you couldn't make it freaking work. Now, he didn't really want to be there, which is why he went to the USFL with the LA Express. But, hey, you had him there, and you lost him. So, yeah, and Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Like, your greatest quarterback of all time prior to Tom Brady is Brad Johnson. That's what we're competing with here. No disrespect to Brad Johnson, but that was their greatest ever quarterback until Brady got there. And then Brady not only won a Super Bowl, but won an MVP with Tampa Bay as well. So it just made, or did he won it? He might not have won an MVP, but he won a passing title. Hold on, my brain's telling me he won an MVP with Tampa. I could be sorely mistaken. No, he did not win. Okay. For some reason, I had a vision in my head where he had to accept the award while he was on the screen because he was at the Super Bowl, and I couldn't remember if that was true or not with Tampa. But he did lead the league in passing yards with Tampa, and he was there for 3 years. So, yeah, Tom Brady's definitely the greatest quarterback in Buccaneers history. The Titans, Warren Moon, well, yeah, for the entire organization, yes. But if we're just including the Titans, it's Steve McNair. If we're just talking about the Titans. But if we're including the Oilers, which we are because that's the entire history of the team, it's Warren Moon, and it's not really that much of a conversation. You have Dan Pastorini in there. Steve Grogan, I think, was another quarterback in that category. But once you get to McNair, after that, it is rough. Like, you're looking at, we got Will Levis. Cam Ward could be that guy. I have a lot of faith in Cam Ward. I mean, again, we've talked about it before. The dude went from a 0-star recruit out of high school in a triple option to a guy who was an All-American and number one overall pick in the draft. I'm not going to doubt his work ethic, so I will not doubt Cam Ward at all at the next level. But Kerry Collins, Vince Young, you have Matt Hasselbeck, you have Charlie Whitehurst, you have Marcus Mariota was all right, Tannehill was all right, but you don't have a great lineage of quarterbacks post McNair. McNair was awesome. McNair is, again, one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. Body failed him, and he left and went to Baltimore when Vince Young got drafted. They should have just kept him. I mean, they literally brought in Matt Leinert's either quarterback coach or QB coach or offensive coordinator to the Titans and let McNair go to Baltimore and brought in Kerry Collins. Like, if you just kept McNair, Vince Young seamlessly would have transitioned to the NFL, and he had a Rookie of the Year, obviously, in there, but Kerry Collins would make a lot more sense with Matt Leinart than Vince Young. And Kerry Collins was fine in Tennessee, but just my opinion on the matter, because they apparently, Jeff Fisher's a USC guy. Apparently he wanted Vince Young, or Matt Leinart, but Bud Adams, Texas guy, wanted Vince Young, went with Vince Young. And the Commanders, Redskins, football team, whatever, Joe Theismann, I'd probably say Sonny Jurgensen. If I had to pick the best quarterback in Washington history, I understand Joe Theismann because Joe Theismann won a Super Bowl with the organization. Sonny Jurgensen did not do that. He did win an NFL championship, but it wasn't a Super Bowl, so no one really cares about that kind of stuff. But Joe Theismann got drafted, played all over the field, was a punt returner at times for the the Redskins, and then got in the starting job, won their first Super Bowl, which led to Doug Williams winning a Super Bowl, Mark Rippon winning a Super Bowl against the Bills, but that's whatever. But I would say Sonny Jurgensen is the greatest quarterback in Washington football team's history. Like, you look at what he did in the 60s, constantly throwing for 3,000 yards. And not just, he was with Philadelphia for a short while, but back-to-back 3,000-yard seasons with Philadelphia. Goes to Washington, 2,900 yards his first year, skip a year, because he only had 2,300 yards, but then 3,200 yards, 3,700 yards in 1967. 3,700 yards in 1967. In the 60s, to when he retired in 74, he led the league in passing 5 times in that stretch, which, as we talked about before, that's a stretch of the time where we had Johnny Unitas in that category, and he was still leading the league in passing yards during that time frame. Joe Namath was also in that category. Like, I think I'm fairly comfortable in saying Sonny Jurgensen is the greatest Washington football team quarterback of all time. And in recent history, Jane Daniels could definitely be on that trajectory, but right now, Joe Theismann, like, I thought it was weird when they had Dwayne Haskins had to ask Joe Theismann to have his number because the number's not even retired. So I thought that was kind of weird. But yeah, I'd say Sonny Jurgensen. So overall, this list is not as bad as what I thought, because usually when I see these lists, I get scared. But I didn't read this list at all. I saved it, and I was like, I'm going to talk about it on the show. But I did. I didn't look at it, and yeah, we talked about it. It wasn't as bad. I made a couple tweaks in there, but nothing ridiculous. But that's all I've got for you today on this episode of the Logan Blackman Show. George Pickens getting traded to Dallas. Interesting. Definitely fits the Cowboys. Definitely be a nice fit if he stays on the field next to CeeDee Lamb, giving him another option in there. The college football playoff, talking about expanding the 16 teams. Stop touching it. Stop touching it. We're getting a little bit too far gone at this point. Just stop touching it. Just let it live. Let it live. And yeah, we got the NFL schedule released tomorrow. We've got a few games leaked already, but the schedule release is officially tomorrow. So yeah, we'll probably talk about that next week. But yeah, make sure again to follow the different social media accounts that I mentioned before. Make sure to follow all the different podcast links, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Check out the blog post at LoganBlackmanShow.com. Make sure to check out our latest video going over the 2026 quarterback prospect rankings. We'll have another video out for you on Saturday, so make sure you subscribe to that channel to check that out. I've been Logan Blackman. Hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, I sincerely apologize. Try to be better next time, and I will see you guys later. Peace.